And as other issues hot up on the global stage, the all-important G20 summit of late last week has already faded from the headlines. But given the extent of the global economic and financial nightmare, there's no doubt the euphoria of the summit's conclusion will soon be revisited in the cold light of day. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown called it a new world order. Barack Obama labelled it an historic turning point. And Kevin Rudd hailed an end to cowboy capitalism. But any substantive change from the summit to match the catchy soundbites is still somewhat elusive. Not only did the world's leaders not sign a new Bretton Woods-style agreement, they restated commitments for more money to the institutions that sprang from that historic meeting in the 30s. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank will now be in a better position to help struggling nations and deliver export finance to promote trade. Europe correspondent Emma Alberici reports from London.
I think a new world order is emerging. The London summit was historic.
President Barack Obama pledged to bring change to America, and on his first trip outside the United States, he was adamant that he'd helped bring change to the world's financial markets.
Today we've learned the lessons of history.
1,000 members of the international media gave him a rock star's welcome as he delivered an upbeat assessment of the G20 summit.
But after weeks of preparation and 2 days of careful negotiation, we have agreed on a series of unprecedented steps to restore growth and prevent a crisis like this from happening again.
The view among the leaders and economists alike was that the mere act of getting all these men and 2 women together in the one room at the one place at the same time to discuss the economic crisis was an achievement worth celebrating. They committed to $1.5 trillion Australian dollars for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to help struggling countries and to support trade finance. But they stopped short of committing governments to any more domestic budget spending, otherwise known as fiscal stimulus. Was it that significant?
No, it was certainly not a new Bretton Woods. We've used and revived Bretton Woods. We've used the institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, and I think that's actually very sensible. There's not been much wrong with the institutions.
Lord Owen was the UK's Foreign Secretary in the 70s, the last time Britain's economy was in as much trouble as it is now. He's long argued that the IMF is critical to a global recovery.
But to come out with a specific commitment to a 500 billion IMF increase is substantial. And we need it quite quickly. We need it in Europe, we need it for countries that are not in the Eurozone but came out of the old Soviet Union empire, and they're in quite big trouble. We need it in third world countries, and who knows, maybe Britain even will need it in the next year or two.
Across China, the news from the G20 communiqué was greeted well. State newspapers showed support for the summit, with the Global Times declaring that the achievement of the G20 had been beyond expectations.
For China's stock market, particularly the export sector, there should be quite a significant boost here, because this communiqué is putting into place some quite significant measures, it seems like, to boost global demand and particularly trade financing. So there are some positives there.
Not so long ago, the meeting of rich nations would have excluded China, but it's now the 3rd largest economy in the world and is soon set to overtake Japan as the 2nd. It's also about the only economy that's still growing, and at an impressive 6 to 8%. Premier Hu Jintao committed funds to the IMF, but in return, backed by Australia, he wants a greater say in managing the world's finances. The G20 say he won't get that until at least January 2011. The world leaders say they've tightened the rules to stop excessive pay and to make sure this kind of financial market mayhem won't play out again.
This is the first time the global regulators have stepped in to, wild corporate cowboy behaviour as far as their remuneration is concerned, completely detached from the risks that they are creating for the whole financial system.
This was hailed as an end to the Washington consensus, Thatcherism, or what Kevin Rudd, our Prime Minister, calls neoliberalism, and a return to big government. But that's not what they've done here, is it?
No, of course not. They have broadly, and I think rightly, kept the market economy. And overall, I think the market, if you take a span of a century, has done quite well for us.
So for all the talk of a return to big government and an end to soft-touch regulation, what the leaders finally agreed to sounded nothing like that. The communiqué commits governments to a set of non-binding principles which they'll take back to their respective territories and ask their companies to please adopt.
President Obama helped me on the question of tax havens, but there were enough of us in the room for you to have the details of what happened there.
60% of hedge funds pay little to no tax because they're based in places like Jersey in the Channel Islands. The British Prime Minister has long struggled to look credible on the issue of tax havens, given so many of them, like Jersey, are British territories. France and Germany won the day, and the G20 hailed an end to banking secrecy.
Now, we already know from agreements I've signed with the US that that's not necessarily going to bring us the sort of results we need, because it relies on the state of Jersey to determine what information they're going to hand over. So we're still going to have this problem of information being withheld, of secret trusts, of not knowing what's going on.
Stock markets around the world shot up after the G20 summit, but many saw that as a relief rally. Relief that tougher action wasn't taken to interfere in free market capitalism.
Will we avoid a depression? I think probably. I think it's a coherent response at a time when we could have just carried on with the incoherence.